all of us living on it are facing an uncertain future. Our climate is changing, environments and ecosystems are changing, the world seems less stable. But what if this moment is just a turning point for a better future, one that works for everyone, where we all have what we need in harmony with nature? How could we get there? This is a series where we learn about the climate crisis, dig into the science behind it, and learn ways each of us can accelerate action, specifically through our jobs. I'm Erin with the Hive Initiative, and this is Climate Workspace. We first heard about Earth for All while researching our video on if sustainable business is possible. With so much negative news about the state of our planet, we wanted to know if a sustainable future was even achievable. And that's why we were really excited to learn about Earth for All. It's the first time that we saw a plan to address our global crises that advocated for systemic change, was backed by scientists and economists, and was inclusive of all people. But I wanted to know, where did this initiative come from? How does it work, and what actions does it recommend? And would it really create a world with no poverty, everybody living with a high sense of well-being, and allow our societies to thrive far into the future? Recently, I was able to sit down with one of its creators. Per Espen Stoknes is an economist and a psychologist, and he told me about the history of Earth for All, how it works, and what we need to do to implement it. It's my hope that after watching this, you'll feel inspired to send this to the people that you know, including your government leaders, so that we can all be educated and empowered to make our better world happen. Here's our conversation. So for somebody who's never heard of it, what is Earth for All?
Well, a lot of people say they want systems change rather than climate change. But if you ask them, what exactly is the system? What are the main components? And if you change some of them, how much do you have to pull? And how do you know if the system is actually changing or not? And then if it is changing, is it going in the right direction, or is it too slow, or is it in the wrong direction? So Earth for All is a systems analysis that shows exactly how to change the system towards a world where we create more well-being for people within the planetary boundaries. Our economy keeps crashing, however, with the global financial crisis, the pandemic crisis, the inflation crisis, and so on. Our economy is also destabilizing societies in terms of creating polarization, culture wars, increasing inequality, and a dysfunctional political system. So what we have tried to do is to take society with politics, economy with all the major technologies and investments, and then nature. So nature, economy, society in one system to see where are the most effective leverage points. And we're building on the tradition from Dana Meadows and the Club of Rome, going back 50 years to the first Limits to Growth report. But that was kind of negative. It said, we're going to crash, and people were a bit scared about people saying no to growth, etc. But we have been discussing, rather than growth or no growth, what is the sufficient change in the system to creating a flourishing society, whether the economy grows or not. So that's why we say maximizing well-being within planetary boundaries. And that can happen whether the economy grows a lot or not as much.
Who is behind this initiative, and can you tell me about the history of it and how it was created?
So I mentioned already the Club of Rome, which is a think tank made by Aurei Pace, Italian industrialist and humanist in the late 60s. And then they commissioned a group of scientists to make a long-term scenario project, and that was called What's the Limits to Growth. That was 1972. 50 years on, we say 2022, and that is the year when we published Earth for All, which is the follow-up book to that seminal discussion about what kind of growth and what kind of system do we want. We are 4 or 5 academic partners. So it is Potsdam PIC, which is one of the world's most famous climate research institutes. Then there is the Stockholm Resilience Center, which is Stockholm, no surprise. Norwegian Business School, where we're sitting right now, and also a few affiliated organizations hosted then by the Club of Rome. We invited 30 transformational economists or thought leaders within systems change to a commission, the Transformational Economics Commission. So that was part of Earth for All. There was the scientific team which did the modeling, which I was the head of or coordinator for. And then we are also building a movement. So we want to reach out to everybody who wants a better system and wants to align with the strategies that we have found.
So why is our world in trouble, and what will happen if we continue as we are?
When we made the Earth for All model, we looked at all the different things that have happened since 1980 to 2020, 40 years. And we amassed all the best statistics we could find on economy, on climate, on society, on population. And then we made the model so that it would regenerate or recreate the main trends from 1980 to 2020. So the model really starts in 1980, and then by analyzing the system, we end up in 2020 with the data which is exactly where we are today. Now that we have the model which understands how the world has developed, we can run the model the next 40 years. And then what we see is that we will break the 2-degree global warming threshold that the Paris Agreement has agreed, which means much more wildfires, floods, loss of all corals. Maybe part of the Earth will be uninhabitable for humans. Food systems will crash, and Amazon may be burned down, and the ocean currents may have severe disruptions with all kinds of unpredictable, unfortunate consequences. So, climate issue, but on the other hand, inequality. We see that over the last 40 years, inequality has escalated. We have now a group of super rich, the 1% richest, which keeps taking ever more of the wealth and the income that the societies are generating. And this undermines the stability of societies because that 1% gets to decide much more than the majority. If the 1% were really sustainable people, that may be not a big problem, but they're not really. They are part of a capitalist system which keeps giving the benefit to ever fewer people. Then maybe we have a group of 70,000 people out of the 7 billion, which have insane amount of wealth, and that creates a system where inequalities keep escalating. So the fewer of the richest get ever more compared to the 50% of the bottom. So the current model undermines societies and the planet, and also it undermines attempts to do something about it. So democracy doesn't really work, it's rigged for the rich. And when this society is hit by environmental crisis, whether hurricanes or floods or just droughts or wildfires, then society is in worse shape to deal with it. And that is why we get a vicious cycle where a fragmenting society is unable to meet environmental disruption that hits back to make the society weaker. So we have a vicious cycle between society, nature, and the economy. And that is why I think Earth for All is very important, because we can see exactly where these things are happening and exactly where we will go if this continues, and also exactly which are the levers we need to pull to create a systems change, and also see how much do you have to pull it in order to have enough effect. After you know the plumbing, you need to know which valves to kind of turn in order to have sufficient change, or which connections you need to fix to have that system go into another mode. And that's what we've been asking ourselves for 50 years, learning by each generation of models. So the first model was World 1, then the World 2, and then the World 3 was in limits to growth, and that has been modified. And then we made an Earth 3 model in 2018, and now we made an Earth 4 model in 2020, and now in 2024 we have our Earth 4 regional model. So now we have a model for Africa, one for Latin America and China, US, Europe. All of the world's regions now have a unique model, so it means that we can become more granular. Not just global solutions, but also what is needed to change each region and how the effect of one region impacts the other regions. So it becomes kind of complex, but if you like systems thinking, it's very inspirational, at least the kind of people that I talk to.
How is the model then used? How are the graphs generated and then used for predictions?
I have a little issue with you there, because we don't like the word predict.
Oh, okay.
We can run the model and then see in a consistent way. We make scenarios. Scenarios are not predictions. So that we can have what-if questions. What if our attempts at change now are about the same as they have been, so we continue with decision-making as usual? That's where we get to the too little, too late scenario. We see that we will break the 2 degrees target, we will have increasing inequality, well-being will decline, and nature becomes grayer, and we have loss of biodiversity, etc. And then we can also create another scenario where, well, what if we do something with poverty and inequality along with energy? Then we get this kind of world, this kind of scenario. But we are very aware, since we are scientists, that our model is wrong, because models are models, they are not the world. So all models are wrong, but some are useful for decision making. And this is what we hope, is that by having a better model of the system, that can inspire people to take better decisions today, so that we have long-term, more beneficial effects. Because if you don't have a long-term model, you're easily enclosed in short-term thinking. That's another major issue. You could say we made Earth for All because people tend to be short-term. We are short-term in the sense of individuals. I want my cake now rather than in 1 year. I'm thinking about this next weekend. I'm not thinking about myself in 10 years' time. And also in markets, because I want to have a dividend on my investments, return on investment now. Next quarter, I would like to sell my shares and earn some money quickly. And also, we have high interest rates, meaning that the value of something 20, 30 years down is very low compared to something of the value now. And then finally, we're short-term in democracies, in the meaning that you usually have just a couple of years, maybe 4, as a politician, to do something and then be re-elected. So humans are short-term in individual behaviors, in the market behavior, and in the political behavior. So if we don't have tools that help us think long-term, then we will tend to do more short-term decisions. And Earth for All and the model is a help for societies to imagine themselves 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line, and then ask, what does that mean for today? What should we do now if we want a better world in 2050, or for your children, for my grandchildren?
So Earth for All is advocating solutions to the problems that we're facing. What are those solutions?
So many solutions. And the good news, by the way, looking at the last 50 years, when the Limits to Growth came out in 1972, people were very worried about poverty. There were endless poverty in China and Africa, and everywhere you look, people were extreme poverty. There was also a huge population growth. So poverty combined with population growth made the outlook look terrible. And that meant that food production would lose out, so we would have famine and people would starve to death. All energy was coal and oil, which generated pollution. Now, all those 4 challenges in 1972 have been solved. So we do know how to lift hundreds of millions and billions out of poverty. We've done that. We have solved the global population bomb. It's been defused by particularly giving women education. So now we see birth rates going dramatically down, because when women have education and a job, they typically choose to have 2 children. And third, we know how to make food for 10 billion people on the earth in a way that doesn't break the boundaries of the planet. Potsdam Institute made some wonderful studies about how to do it. And finally, we now know how to make a solar, wind, battery, hydro, geological energy system that works for all 8 or 9 billion people. So the knowledge of the solution is here, but for some reason we don't use that knowledge. So that is why we made the 5 turnarounds. That is, how do we take those solutions we have and put them into use at the scale and speed we need? The world hasn't been static over the last 40 years. There's been a lot of dynamic development, and those dynamic developments, some of them are moving in a very good way, like the 4 I mentioned. Others are undermining that good. So now we need to configure those trends that are necessary to create a new system and scale them up and speed them up. And that's why we ended up with these 5. We need to improve the speed on poverty elevation. Poverty is going down, but yet it's too slow. So if we continue at current speeds, then it will take until 2080, another 60 years or 2 generations of hundreds of millions of people living in poverty. So if we do an extraordinary turnaround on poverty, that can solve poverty 40 years earlier. So by 2040s, we've eliminated poverty in the world. So that's the poverty turnaround, increasing the speed by giving particularly low-income countries more opportunities, not just to pay their debt to rich countries, but to invest in green and health-promoting, food-producing jobs in their own countries. The next is inequality. So poverty is in a way between countries, because a country like Norway or UK or the US doesn't really have a poverty issue, it has an inequality issue. That's why we have poverty in Norway or US, not because there's lack of money, but because most of it goes to the top 10%. So how can we reconfigure inequality within each country so that rather than taking 50 or 60% of all income to the top 10%, you reduce that to 40%. It's not about eliminating inequality, it's about making inequality tolerable. And we're not doing that. We're moving in the wrong direction. So we're making inequality worse by year. So we need to turn around from that trend, which capitalism is very good at, taking capital and making more money and giving it to the richest. We need to make a capitalist system that also works for the bottom 40%. Having a larger share of national incomes go to the bottom 40% means that they get more purchasing power, and that also stimulates the markets, which again gives better return on investment for capital owners. So it becomes like a more vital or flourishing flow rather than all the flows stagnating in the top 10%. So after poverty and inequality, we have looked at empowerment of women. And why is that? Well, again, we see that if a woman gets education and then access to job and some economic security, she tends to have about 2 children per woman. That's good for the children, that's good for the woman, and it's good for the man. We see also that a woman who doesn't get any education tends to have 7 children. So the average difference between a woman with 0 years education and 8 to 10 years education is 5 children, which means that we've curbed the population growth and we peak it around 2050 with a gradual decline. Some people will be worried about that, but I wouldn't really, because we are enough humans. I don't think we have a world with 15 billion is better than a world with 6. And we were 6 billion in the year 2000, and that's in a giant leap where we see the global population in the year 2100. Fourth, food. So the biggest threat against nature, whether that is land use or forests or biodiversity or mammals or fishes or whatever, is our food system. And it also causes a third to 50% of all greenhouse gas emissions, depending on exactly how you count it. And most of that food is actually wasted. So a third is wasted from soil to table. And then a lot of the food that people eat makes them sick or overweight or obese. We could easily make nourishing food for 9 to 10 billion people with regenerative and intensified agriculture, which requires much less land. So the forest could grow back and the fishes could regenerate along with the kelp, rather than the coastal area being destroyed by nitrogen fertilizer runoff. So we are wasting fertilizer, we're wasting soil, we're wasting food, we're wasting people's health on a food system that just doesn't work. And eliminating that by changing diets, by improving food efficiency and the way we grow things is an incredible opportunity, both for economy and for people. That's the food turnaround. And the fifth is maybe the one that climate activists have been speaking the most of, which is energy system. How we need to first improve energy efficiency. So most of the energy we use is wasted. People think we need coal, oil and gas, but in fact 70% of this is just waste. It goes to waste heat in the wrong places and ends up as CO2 in the atmosphere. So when we do energy efficiency and we electrify everything, so everything that connects to a flame should now be replaced with a magnet or electric motor, and then with abundant renewables, solar in particular, we can easily give people the energy they need for good lives, flourishing lives, without burning carbon. Carbon is life. We love carbon, but not burning it. That's the stupid thing with current energy system. So those are the 5. We need to simultaneously work at poverty, inequality, empowerment of women, particularly in food and energy. And then what we found is that these are connected, like, my hand here, 5 fingers, but they all have the same systemic base, and they also interconnect. So it doesn't help to build a lot of solar farms in India when only the rich Indians can buy it. It doesn't help to make a lot of wind power if it's used just to run AI rather than help people get to work. How can we see that empowerment is connected with poverty, which is connected with energy and food, and these interconnections are what we have been specializing in the Earth for All work.
So how do we achieve this? How do we make the Earth for All turnarounds happen?
Earth for All is a 3-pillar project. So there is the science and the model, which I mentioned, and then there is the transformational economics, which have helped us write the book and giving a breadth. And then the answer to your question lies in the 3rd pillar, which is movement building. So we need the new technologies that are made, also use of AI in smart ways, and solar and batteries and all that. We also need market forces to scale up innovations and help spread that everywhere. Markets are incredible at bringing the right solution to the right place at the right time. We also need regulations because the markets by themselves don't do that quick enough. And finally, we need mass movement of people with eloquent spokespersons, and maybe even we should complement our current democracies or whatever type of governance system a country has with something we call citizens' assemblies. A citizen assembly is when you randomly pick 100 people, put them together and give them key questions to solve. So all parts of society is somehow represented. It's not specialized politicians. It's not people who've been co-opted by corporations or lobbyists. They are us. And those 100 together would have a clear mandate. And this mandate they would answer over the course of maybe a week or 2 weeks. And then this could become a highly prioritized policy template that politicians and government could refer to. So they have legitimate power, legitimate arguments and foundations that go beyond a political system that seems to be rather screwed, to use that word, whether it's the US or UK or even Norway. So the rich and the dominant financial interests have been able to embed themselves in decision-making processes in such a way that it doesn't serve the majority. And we need more holistic, systemic, long-term thinking in policy-making processes than those that are bought up by the lobby power. And citizens' assemblies is one way of doing this that is attracting a lot of momentum these days. If I should conduct one, I would have it to focus particularly on creating a citizens' fund that could then make sure that when companies extract value from whether it's culture or nature, some of that goes to the citizen fund, which then can go to everybody. So everyone will get a fair share of the nation's wealth. Whether it's intellectual property or it's oil use or it's other types of mining or it's even real estate in cities, because land in big cities in particular is a limited resource and it's hugely valuable because everybody wants it, but it's not the person who owns it who deserved it, it's just the whole city that is there that creates the value. So everybody, all citizens, everybody living in the city should have a fair share when real estate prices go through the roof. So that's a way of reallocating the commons, our shared values and shared wealth, back to everybody who should have a share of it because we're a citizen. How this could be done, I don't know the details, but I'm sure a citizen assembly, if they get the opportunity, they could look at the existing models such as the Alaskan Fund, and also the Norwegian Oil Fund, and other examples of citizens' funds that are in existence, and then how could this be implemented in our country and make that as a plan. So with a citizen assembly looking at a citizen fund, how it should work for us, you could help reconfigure the economic system to work for everybody, not just the top 10%.
And do you know of any countries doing this now, the Citizens' Assembly?
It's already been done, for instance, in Ireland, and a number of other pilot projects are in the planning, also one for the Global Society, which will be run this autumn and launched at the UN Summit for the Future in September in New York. So Earth for All is working together with something called ISWE, I is we, and they are an organization dedicated to rolling out citizens' assemblies. And also a lot of researchers are looking into how to use this in a better way and avoid the pitfalls and make it maximum impactful. So I think this is a very fascinating space to watch.
So what can an individual do? A lot of people have climate anxiety and want to do something, but they might not feel they have enough resources or influence to help. What could an individual do to help make Earth for All's turnarounds happen?
First is to go to earthforall.live website and then join our newsletter. So sign up, you become part of the movement. Also, you can follow some of our social media accounts and share those. So that's the direct connection with the Earth for All. But I would like to lift this up a bit to a higher, more general level. As you say, many people have a climate anxiety, and that's with a good reason. They're not sick, they're a normal, healthy response to a crazy development. So I congratulate everybody with climate anxiety. It's the other way, really. Those who don't have climate anxiety, they should really seek a psychologist because there must be something wrong with them.
Yeah.
But of course they won't. So leave that aside. There are 4 main roles you can envision yourself in if you want to contribute or do something. The first is one that is often mentioned and sometimes hyped, but it is both important and it's insufficient by itself. It is our role as a consumer. So when and if you buy something, try to buy things that have the lowest possible footprint for what you need. And that, of course, also includes helping a circular economy by bringing back whatever you buy. So buy better, buy less stuff, and bring it back into circulation. Companies really care about what their customers do. So we should never underestimate the effect of 10,000 people actually choosing a bit differently. That's the job of their market department, to really listen to what is the customer saying. So the customer has power, of course not enough, but at least it's a very important channel. If a company does something in the change of the product portfolio, launching more bio-friendly or climate-friendly products, and then nobody buys it, they stop doing it. So we have a lot of power as consumers, and we should use that power. But then, of course, that's not enough. So we also have our role as unemployed, whether we are students or we're workers or we are bosses. Whatever you do in your job can be reframed or shifted towards a sustainable strategy. And this is why I'm here at Norwegian Business School, because I teach sustainable business models. Whatever project you're in, you could always ask your colleagues or your boss, how can we shift this towards a more sustainable version? So as workers, we have a lot of power. And as students, I love the students that push their universities to do more. So with that, workers and our role as consumers, we can do a lot, but of course, that's not everything. We also owners of things. Some of us have shares, some of us have savings, some of us have a house, some of us have a car. So whatever it is, what we own should be gradually shifted towards a more green or climate-friendly portfolio of assets. So if you have a savings account or your pension fund, you should ask your brokers how much of it has been shifted towards companies that are being part of the solution. Now, that's something we can do as consumer, workers, and owners, but also, finally, as citizens. That's maybe the most important thing. So if you should only do just one thing, we should vote for those who are committed to ambitious nature and inequality measures. If you live in a democracy, that's the single one most important action you can do. So it doesn't cost you a lot. Every 4 years or something, you have just to do that. And then if you want to leverage that, you should maybe join networks with other people who say, here's my vote. It's up for grabs to the one that has the most binding commitments to climate or nature conservation in an equitable way. If we could have that pooled and made visible, then politicians could be sure that if they did that thing, the sustainable thing they know is right, they would also be incentivized for it by having more votes. Because today politicians know what they should do, but they don't know how to do it and get re-elected. That's the policy governance trap, so to speak. The politicians are waiting for you and me, and we are waiting for the politicians. It's a hen and chicken situation, where it has been in a deadlock for a long time. And when we start to pool our votes for the most ambitious climate policy commitments, then this could radically accelerate the decision-making process. So many things we can do, Erin, from a consumer, worker, owner, and citizen perspective. So never say to anybody that there's nothing you can do. Individuals are hugely important in order to support business and politicians to make the necessary structural changes. But also, sometimes, since I'm a psychologist, people say, oh, you come up with all these individual solutions. But individual solutions are not enough. We need political solutions. And they're right. But the thing is, political and commercial solutions depend on it being embraced by the individuals. So it's a triangular system. Up to today, politicians have been waiting for consumers, and consumers have been waiting for maybe corporations, and corporations have been waiting for politicians, and so on. So this system has been stalled, and we need to shift that triangular system into one that accelerates change. So when politicians do something, they're supported by citizens, and when corporations do something, they're supported by new policies. When corporations launch sustainable products, then consumers actually jump out and buy it, vote with their wallet. That's how I envision the change to accelerate.
We have what we need to change our world and make a better future. We have the science to guide us and the technology to make it happen. All we need now is to help everyone understand and embrace it. We can do this. Thanks to Per Espen Stoknes for sharing his knowledge with us. To learn more about Earth for All, visit earthforall.life. To learn more about how the Hive Initiative uses creative solutions to solve global problems, visit hiveinitiative.org. Thanks for watching.